Okay, guys, get ready. This is going to be an extra special conversation. We're getting to talk with one of my new favorite humans. We're talking with Steve Mellor. I was just on his podcast, and so we're just continuing that conversation, but flipping it to Dream, Think, Do. So I feel like, my gosh, I'm getting to introduce an old friend to old friends. This is great. But Steve has an incredible story, and he is on a mission to help others to live and form at the highest levels. Originally, he's from England, so you'll hear that in his voice, although he lives here in the States now. And he was ranked in the top 50 swimmers in the world, and then became a coach and has coached elite athletes. But now, like me, he coaches leaders and executives and high performers. And he takes what he learned from being a former Olympic swim coach and applies that to executives and high performers in so many different ways. And he's got his podcast, which is called Growth Ready. And I was just on it. I highly recommend this podcast, not just because I'm on it, but because Steve is such a great interviewer, and he is truly teaching from the journey, but also teaching from the experience and being both really curious, but also knowing what it takes to pull out the best in others. And he inspires and equips others to do that too. So I'm so excited for this conversation to see where it's going to go. Steve, welcome to Dream, Think, Do, buddy.
Mitch, so excited to be here. I don't know which one's going to come first, the dream, the think, the do, but I'm ready for all of it. We're
going to get into all of it, Now, I love it. And I know you start your podcast basically with the same question of, what does it mean to be growth ready? But it's what I was like, and I loved answering that question when I was on your podcast, but I'm like, what does Steve say? So I love Growth Ready because I know that's your website, that's your podcast, that's what you want to see more of in the world. What does being growth ready mean to you?
You broke the rule.
Exactly,
no one's supposed to ask me. No one's supposed to ask me. Well, for me, growth comes down to, can we focus on our behaviors? Are we willing to start addressing, starting to own, and starting to practice the behavior that will allow us to simply believe that we are ready for any and all growth that we are potentially capable of going to achieve? Because the cart before the horse analogy is very apparent when it comes to the growth ready.
Yeah.
Because in many ways, people will say, well, don't you have to be ready for the growth? Like, why are you thinking about growth before you get to ready? I'm like, well, turns out that there's this set of behaviors that come with growth that you have to be actually firstly addressing before we get to the starting line and say, okay, now I'm ready. Let's see what we got. So for me, can we shift the mind towards behavior? Can we own the behavior? And then can we actually start to implement the types of behaviors that tell us that we are in fact ready? So we don't even ask the question.
Yeah, I love that. And I think what's beautiful about something like that is timeless, because that applies to every season of life, right? Whether you're just getting started in whatever industry you're in, or moving to another level of leadership or responsibility, being growth ready and being intentional with behaviors that we have that matters no matter what, right?
Yeah.
So I love that. All right, we're going to keep coming back to that, but I want to go back swimming. Just so you know, I never enjoyed swimming. It was one of those things. My first experience in swim lessons was a horrible, traumatic experience. So, getting back into the water, I've since enjoyed it immensely. But starting out, I had a love-hate relationship, but mostly hate with swimming. What was it with swimming that drew you to it and to perform at such a high level? What was it about the swimming that got you started there?
It's funny because when I was in it, I don't think I could have actually answered that question because I was so immersed in it. It was such a way of making every decision in my life at that time. For example, when I was 14, I made the decision that I was going to start training at one of the centers of excellence, which is about an hour away from where I grew up in this small town of Chester. But the center of excellence was closer to Manchester, one of the largest cities in the UK.
Absolutely.
And so that decision was a family decision because it meant that I wasn't driving at that time. Me and my dad were going to have to wake up 4 times a week at 4:15 in the morning.
Yeah. You swim,
drive there
early.
Dive in at 5:30, 5:45. My dad would take a 2-hour nap while I was swimming. And then I'd come back to the car. He'd take me back to Chester. I'd go to school, and then I'd rinse and repeat in the afternoon, but I'd go on the train this time. I'd hop on the train, go an hour out, swim, come back. And I was doing this, like I said, 4 days a week. So 8 practices required me to travel 1 hour one way. So like you start to get that in your mind, and you go, if you start questioning the rationale in that, you probably stop doing it really quickly.
Yeah.
So for me, when I look back into what it was that swimming, like what it was about swimming that drew me in, it was this constant opportunity to prove, hey, can you cut it today the same way you cut it yesterday?
Yeah.
It was like, can you meet the call again today? Like it's the many hundredth day in a row, or many hundredth time over the course of many, many weeks, where I've had to wake up at this time, I've had to travel this far, I've had to work this hard. And for me, that constant challenge to put myself in comparison to the quality in which I showed up with the day before was without a doubt the biggest draw about it. Because the one thing that initially I would say got me in was like, I want to compete, I want to win, all this kind of thing. But what drew me to stay in it, because there was other sports, there was other things that I could have been doing through 100%. That time of my life. What kept me in it, what truly drew me to it, was this opportunity every single day to say, okay, what was it we did yesterday? What is it that we can do today to ensure that we make the most of this day? But also in comparison to that day before, did I meet the call again? Did I reach the standard? And sometimes I didn't, but it was that opportunity to wake up the next day and try again. Blank slate, 0-0. What can we do today in comparison to the day before?
I love that. Well, and to look at the success that you had as a swimmer, as an athlete, I always wonder, especially I have one of my executive coaching clients, his son is a collegiate swimmer. Incredible. But like the grind of swimming is incredible. The number of early mornings, like getting in the water at 5:30. Think about that. My whole body reacts going, that water was freezing at 5:30 in the morning, making the 2-hour trip, your parents, all those things. What's interesting to me too about the swimming experience is that every athlete has it in every sport, but there's always a moment where you could tap out. Right? Like, especially as you go to elevate to higher levels, there's fewer and fewer people that perform at that level, but boy, you have to continue to keep making that choice. Was there ever a time, mid-career, all of that, where you're like, it could have been easy to tap out, but you didn't? And why did you stick with it?
Yeah. Just as I was turning 18, so now I was able to drive.
Yeah.
But my dad, it was the great, like, of all the information, all the news and all the success I've been able to give my dad over the years, the greatest gift I ever gave him was the day that I passed my driving test and said, you no longer have to get up at 4:15. Like that is easily
Here you go, Dad.
number one on the scoreboard.
Yeah.
But for me, when I was 18, and in that year that I was turning 18, about to go to the senior level, I had my first significant injury. So my left, I was double jointed, which was in both my shoulders, which was obviously a huge benefit for a swimmer.
Yeah.
Tons of flexibility, from a physics standpoint, that's really all swimming is physics in the form of movement. From a physics standpoint, it allowed me to get into points in the water that some of my competitors couldn't. So it was a competitive advantage. But with that ability to access wider movements, I could therefore access wider resistance too, greater amounts of resistance. And the shoulders eventually started to say, yo, we don't appreciate this. This doesn't feel good. And so one of my shoulders just eventually started to really give me some trouble. And lo and behold, right as I was making that jump from the junior to the senior level, I was becoming one of the better juniors across a variety of different events in the UK at the time. I needed to get surgery. Wow. And it was that age where in the UK, it's not like it is in the US. Like you don't have that natural pathway into college to compete in college.
Yeah.
There's a handful of universities that offer swimming full time. But if you go that route, you have to say, like, I'm going to put my academics on the back burner and focus on my sport. Whereas obviously in the US, you get to focus on both. And I was not in a position at that time to just jump on a plane and head over to the US. I didn't feel ready for that yet.
Yeah.
And so suddenly I was faced with this decision, like, never mind, like, hey, do I get the surgery and all that kind of thing? It's like, if I get the surgery, do I keep doing this sport? Like, do I go back to what felt like? Do I have to go back to the beginning to rebuild everything?
Back to square one. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And then go again. Just as I'd finally started making that crack into the senior level, I really started to get to the top of the junior level and I was knocking on that door of the senior level. But what ended up happening was that, again, going back to how I answered my own question that you asked there at the beginning around Growth Ready, is it was like, okay, like, at this point in your life, Steve, like who do you want to be? Like, who do you want to
Mm,
be? Like not what do you want to achieve? Who do you want to
yeah.
be? And I'm so fortunate to again have had a dad that was fantastic for me at that point and throughout many chapters of my life, just to be able to help me answer questions like that because I've always had this gift to be curious and come up with the
Yeah.
right question at the right time. But at 18, you don't have the answers, right?
Yep.
And so
Yep.
it's one thing to have a powerful question like that, but it's another thing to then have someone like, okay, I need someone with a little bit more wisdom, a little bit
Yep.
more gray in their hair to actually just talk this through with me. And so
Yeah.
to be able to get to that point to then say, listen, not only am I going to have the surgery, but I'm going to continue to be the version of myself that I believe I am currently at this stage of life. And I'm just going to need a whole bunch of support around me just to get me through the weeks and the months that
Yeah.
lie ahead. And lo and behold, not only did I have that, but I came out of that a better version of myself for having gone through that because I was willing to focus on, hey, who do I want to be
Yep.
versus like, hey, do I still want to do this or
Yep.
what are my goals, all this kind of thing. Because I could control my behavior at that time, at a time where there was so little that I felt like I could control.
Yeah, I love that. And to ask that question at 18 is such an important question for everybody to ask at any age, but especially
Yeah.
at 18 to help you navigate that season, that setback, but also what you turned into a setup, which I love.
Mm.
Well, and I look at your journey too, and I know there's a lot of athletes that try to make the switch to coaching just because it's kind of the low hanging fruit, or people just say, hey, it's my way to stay connected to a sport that I love. But as you well know, there's not a lot of people that make the switch from player to coach successfully. But you really did. You really did. And I think, a part of that probably goes back to the question, who do I want to be? But talk to me about that season, because I know, you've switched again from being an athletic coach to now being a coach and a speaker and an organization changer and all of those things. But talk to me about kind of from an identity standpoint, the who do I
Mm.
want to be, switching from athlete to coach. How was that hard? How did you do it?
It's funny because it was never the plan. Like typically people
Mm,
would say like, hey, like halfway through my senior year, I felt like, okay, I could see myself getting into coaching. And
yeah.
I even had some teammates that would speak that way, like, oh, this whole college coaching thing or swim coaching thing. I think I want to kind of check this out. That wasn't my plan. I was a communication media major. I had this vision of kind of being more so where I am today than I had
Yeah.
initially went, and so for me, I not only did I have that surgery back when I was 18, but by the time I got to the end of my senior year, my shoulder that had initially had some minor repair now needed some major repair. And
Yeah.
so what ended up happening was I just said, hey, like, listen, let's get the surgery. I'm done with my career now. Fantastic. And what I ended up doing was coming back to practice just to check in on some former teammates. And I am in my sling and I'm just hanging out and I see someone do something towards the end of a set when they're getting pretty tired. And I just walk to the side of the pool and I just say, yo, the way you did that, like you can't let yourself do that. Like that's not gonna serve you when it comes to race time. Like you got to be better than
Yeah.
that. And I just said something and then I watched them immediately apply what it
Huh.
was that I suggested. And I just sat there and I was like, huh, that's interesting. Like
That felt good.
not only did I share something, but then someone implemented it and then they gave me even some feedback like, no, I appreciate that. That actually helped a lot. Like that's gonna help me in the long term. And
Yeah.
then I kind of stayed on my feet and did it again over here. Then I stayed on my feet and did it again over there. And I was like, is this what coaching is? Is this coaching?
I think this
Is
is
this what
coaching.
it is? And so what I did in that moment is I made a huge life decision. Is I decided I swam in college at North Carolina State in Raleigh, North
Yeah.
Carolina, and I had a discussion right away with the coaching staff, like, hey, if I were to stay here and get my master's degree, could I be a graduate assistant coach and just keep going a little bit and just see what this is all about? And they were willing to do it. I was excited to do it. So not only did I make a decision to extend my education, but I made a decision to really just go see, like, hey, is this something that could be possible? And lo and
Yeah.
behold, as I'm going through those 2 years as a graduate assistant, I mean, I learned to love it. I learned to
Yeah.
love coaching. I'm given more opportunities to do it. And I'm very fortunate when I look back on that is that the program at a time needed an energy like mine and mindset like
Yeah.
mine. And they really saw that and they granted me opportunities to actually probably do a little bit more than the average graduate assistant would be allowed to do. And I got a real taste of not only, hey, this is what it's like, but also to learn a couple of valuable lessons super early on and I can make that adjustment, make that decision, which eventually led to me saying, hey, let's go see if I can actually do this full time upon
Yeah.
graduating with my master's degree.
That's amazing. I love that. And I love that you gave yourself permission to just experiment, to like just go check it out. And, I always say it's always amazing that I think the best coaches are drawn to coaching, whichever, form of coaching it might be. And it might be mentoring too. Is like
Mm-hmm.
people are drawn to it. Not most of the best don't think I'm going to be a great coach. It's like you just start with a heart for helping other people and seeing
Mm-hmm.
and drawing out the best. And you did that. You just did it from the side of the pool with a sling on your shoulder, and it helped you though also tap into that too. I love it. Well, let's talk about now. You are a coach and a speaker. You're impacting organizations. You love that, working with individuals, all those things. When you brought up behaviors and focusing on behaviors and being growth ready, what would you say, what are some of your favorite, in many ways, the kind of the pillars of what you teach on, what you believe? What are some of the things that are for you kind of
Yeah.
guiding factors for you?
Yeah. So I have this growth acronym that at the heart of everything that I do, it's like an internal operating system for the relationship between myself and the clients. And not just for me as the coach, but it's always happening around us without us necessarily having to say, okay, we're going to work through the acronym. It's just an operating system, like I said.
Yeah.
And so what that acronym is it allows us to get to the behavior. Can we establish the behavior? So we start with the gap, and people hear gap all the time. And typically, I like to ask this question in my keynote. It's like, hey, if you get an email right now and someone says, hey, I've identified a gap in your game, I'd like to meet you on it. Who's quickly replying and asking for that meeting? Like few people are. They're just like, hey, I don't know. Like you're about to tell me I'm doing something wrong. There's something, and it's just like, well,
up, buddy.
right. I'm on the defensive. I'm on the defensive right away. And what I try to do in my coaching is like, well, can a gap simply be a space between where we are right now and where it is we're trying to get to? As opposed to looking at it as a hole, as a dent in our armor, what if it was just simply a gap between the current moment and a future state that we can see ourselves being in?
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is I immediately go to the resistance, which is the R, because anyone who immediately addresses, oh, here's an opportunity for me to grow, for me to maybe bridge a gap. First thing we're going to do is we're going to give ourselves a reason not to. We're going to say, no, maybe not now, not right now. I don't have the capacity to right now. Or that doesn't sound like me. Or a little bit of imposter syndrome will creep in. We'll have doubt. We'll have avoidance. There's so many things. I could keep going for another hour on just ways that we create resistance in our life. But if we address that resistance immediately, when we can do it so simply, is just hey, we've identified a gap. How you feel right now thinking about this gap. And typically someone will address some form of an emotion that shows that there is in fact an internal resistance that could be at play here, which is why the O is the ownership.
Love it. Well, I want to stop. I want to talk
go.
ownership. I love it, but I got to jump in on the resistance thing because I love the gap. Of course, offended by it at first, but like, because that is like when you hear somebody else identify a gap in anything, you're involved with, it's like, hey, you can talk about your own gaps, but don't talk about my gaps, right?
Yeah.
But I do think identifying gaps is important to be able to say, if at the very least it's saying, hey, where are you at? Where you want to be? There's a gap. Right? Where the difference between those two, that there's a gap. I love that you brought up resistance. And I so appreciate the fact that you identified the resistance as the thing that somebody feels, something that somebody identifies within themselves, all of those things. Because what's interesting about resistance is most often when, identify the gap, you start to move forward. The resistance, I think people, at least for themselves, or at least me, I'll just talk about me, right?
Yeah.
The resistance that I feel initially often feels like things outside me. Like it's easier to identify resistance in my world. I don't know the right people. I don't have the time. I don't have the funding for that, whatever it is. Like it always seems like the resistance is outside us. But I think you're exactly right. And what you're saying is the resistance actually first and foremost is the things that are happening internally as opposed to externally.
100%, 100%. And again, we could cover this topic for another half hour without a problem. But the fact is, like, when I first really titled myself executive high performing coach, a lot of people would
Yeah.
say like, what is that?
Yeah.
Who are you serving? And I go,
Yeah.
it's a really professional way of saying I help people get out of their own way. That's really what I'm doing.
That's great.
But I'm just
Yeah,
doing it
absolutely.
at a very high level. That's it.
Yep.
That's all it is. High performers that are looking for that extra 1%. When we get into the weeds of the work, we realize quite quickly that there's a really good chance that it is something that we have control of that we are preventing from happening.
Yep.
That's it.
That's it.
But sometimes we get that realization in a matter of minutes. Sometimes it can take months.
Yep.
And that's the work that folks like you and I do. Is like, hey, how do we just simply get you aware that you may in fact be the very thing that is getting in your own way.
The biggest resistance, right?
Like you may be the biggest resistance.
It's so easy to say that stuff that's out there, but it's like, yeah, some of that stuff out there exists, but it really starts with what's going on in here. So I love that. I think that is so, so important. We all need to be reminded of that, me included. I love that. So let's talk about the ownership, because that is so wildly important.
Yeah, and I even love that you stopped me at the resistance, because what's funny about the acronym is that over time, what I've come to realize is that the two, like there's 6 letters, and they actually pair up with one another as well, which is really cool. Just the way it's like for us to successfully navigate a gap, we need to own the resistance. That's the first. That's the first pairing, and then the second one is the ownership and the work. Okay, so once we own that first part around this is the gap that I want to bridge, and this is the resistance that I'm currently working with. Okay, what does that therefore mean I need to own in this moment? What information have I taken from that initial work that I now need to say, okay, for me to go any further, I need to own what I've been able to identify within that initial work. Because here's the thing, typically we identify the gap and we jump to the work. We go, okay, this is the gap. I'm going to go do some work for that. Or maybe you're going to hear yourself when I say this, leaders out there, you've identified a gap. You've identified a person that could be a great person to bridge that gap. And instead of working through a potential G, R, and O, you've immediately assigned the work. And you're wondering, why is this person not really owning this work?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you didn't sell them on the gap. You didn't explain that, you didn't work through any potential resistance that they maybe have. And then you assume that they would take ownership for some work that you identified. And so again, like this is where the acronym then starts to work both internally and externally.
And I love that, because the growth acronym, what I love is the application for us in internal dialogue within our own goals and goal sets, and in our language, to dream, think, and do. Right? But what I love about growth is that also you can use that as you're leading your team, as you're mentoring someone else, right? To be able to help them identify the gap, to help them talk through the resistance, to help them own the work that they're about to do. Because it's so much easier to assign the work and not have gone through these other wildly important steps. Because it probably, oftentimes for the leader, the gap, the resistance, all of it, it's clear to them. But you're right. If we don't walk them through those steps, that's going to oftentimes, then they're going to bump into resistance of a different kind altogether. So I love it. So doing the work, and then what's next?
Well, and one last thing on the work I will mention, though, is that the beauty of going through the G, the R, and the O is that we get into the 2 pieces that I believe make work most effective, which is that of the reason for the work and the type of work. A lot of the time, we think of the very first thing that comes to mind, and that's the work that we're going to do. We haven't done the work. Okay, is there a clear reason for this work, firstly? And by identifying that reason, are we actually going to then better articulate and identify the type of work that is most effective in this moment, as opposed to, this seems like the obvious step to take right now? And that's the beauty of those 3 things, is that we actually get into the heart of, okay, 2 things that make work most effective: the reason for it and the type of work that we do. And what that does is it sets us up for the last 2, which is truth and habit. Okay, so I told you that at the outset, right? At the outset, I told you that we're trying to create a behavior at the end of this, because once it's a behavior, it gets into the system, and we can now trust it, we can rely it, we can get reps in it, etc. But after all of those first 4 phases, are we going to own the result of what comes from that work? So we believe we've got the right reason, we believe we're doing the right type of work, and yet maybe on some level, we might not still be satisfied.
Yeah.
There still might be something that's bothering us. Maybe there's something from that work that's revealing a truth about, and this is sometimes really hard for us to actually acknowledge, especially folks that I work with. Maybe that gap wasn't as important or the right kind of gap to begin with in the first place. Maybe we identified a gap based on an Instagram reel that we saw somebody else doing, right? Maybe
Yep.
we identified a gap in our game that, for whatever reason, seems like the obvious next step in our journey, but we've, through these initial 4 phases of growth, we've come to realize, oh, wait a second, maybe this isn't the time. Maybe I'm not the right kind of person. Maybe this isn't even the path that I was supposed to be on in the first place. But on the flip side of that, truth can sometimes be the most revealing and most empowering thing too. Is it those first 4 steps can actually tell us, yes, absolutely, I'm convicted now. I am so sure now. I am so clear now that this is the direction I'm supposed to be going. And that right there, Mitch, is what gets us to the habit. We now have total conviction that, hey, this is the right kind of work for me to be doing. I see the reason. I know it's the right kind of work. I've done all this work on the front end. So why wouldn't I now create a habit that can justify me continuing this kind of behavior for the foreseeable future? And my favorite example of all of this, Mitch, is where we get this so wrong, is when it gets to like December 15th, December 16th, and we go, I think I'm going to do a New Year's resolution next year. I think I'm going to do something January 1.
All right.
Right.
Yes.
I'm going to I'm like, for my avid snoozers out there that don't want to go to the gym at 5 a.m. Like, I'm going to be a 5 a.m. gym guy from now on. That's who I'm going to be. So January 2nd, I'm going to start going, and you do it. January 2nd, you go to sleep in your gym clothes, you fly to the gym, you're the first person there. It's amazing. But by week 2, that snooze alarm suddenly seems way more appealing.
Yeah.
Suddenly that resolution is nowhere near as enticing as it was back in mid-December when you came up with it initially. Why? Well, is it possible that you've created a gap and you've created something to bridge that just doesn't make sense for you?
Yeah.
Like, maybe there's a different habit that you could have created that got to the heart of this very issue that you've maybe identified. Hey, I need to get healthier. Hey, I need to start taking more pride in what I do and how I exercise, etc. And you may have a fantastic why, but for whatever reason, you just didn't execute it correctly on the front end with the habit. So go back, do this kind of work, and then identify, you know what? I'm actually an evening person. Or, you know what? I actually do have enough time in my lunch break to get there, to get back. There's some other areas in my life that I need to work on. And suddenly now I'm still convicted in why I started in the first place. But that behavior, most importantly, is serving you on a much more authentic level.
I love this. In my research, I always say I do just enough research to stay this side of a restraining order, right? But I love this growth acronym because it is so useful. And I always appreciate a concept that is tangible and inspiring, right? So I love this, especially when we think about, obviously, we are talking to people that are dreaming bigger, thinking better, and doing more of what they're put on the planet to do. And I think this growth acronym really helps us to do each of those things, right? Whether it's, as we're dreaming and thinking of the things we want to experience more or achieve, that's kind of the gap of saying, all right, what do I want more of? And then to be able to work through the thinking of it, growth really represents so much of the thinking and the doing. But one of the questions I want to ask you on this front, because I think this is so powerful, is I would say, we talk about what dream, think, do. It's important to dream, give yourself permission to dream. It's important to think and build a plan. And then it's important to do. I think the challenge when I talk with dream, think, doers all the time, and I talk to my own coaching clients all the time, I think one of the most dangerous components of something like dream, think, do, or growth is that it's so important to take each of these steps. But oftentimes what we can do is we can get stuck in the thinking part, right? The between the dreaming and the doing is the thinking, which is so important, but it's also so satisfying to go, you know what? I'm going to wait until I have the perfect structure. I'm doing the work, but boy, I'm going to really take the next couple of weeks to work on my truth, right? Before I get to the habits and all those kinds of things. So I love growth because it does create a loop, which is a good and healthy thing, helping us to dream bigger, think better, and do more. But I think if there's probably any hitch within there. It's people get stuck in the thinking and move into analysis paralysis and spend 3 months like, I've got to figure out my truth. I got to figure out my truth, you know? So
Mhm.
how do you yourself, but also how do you help your clients keep moving through that as a loop, as opposed to getting stopped in
Yeah.
any one of those steps?
Yeah, and I love that you're able to see the loop component of it because some may hear that and think if it's very linear, it's like, okay, I've got the habit now, sweet, off I
Yeah.
go, and I've
I'm
worked the
good.
growth. I've
Yeah.
worked the growth system. But the one thing every one of my clients will know about me, and they will attest to in the work that we do, is once we've identified that habit, to take one of your key terms that you shared on my part, is how does that habit then open us up, open our minds up to get
Mm.
curious about what makes sense now as the
Yep.
next gap? What's the
Yep.
next area? Because that habit is going to be tested. That habit we've now established and identified, that's going to keep going. We're
Yep.
going to keep assessing that. We're going to keep checking in. How's it going? How's it going? If at any point we lose a little bit of steam with that, we can always go back through the process and we can
Yeah.
reestablish it, strengthen it, etc. But at the same time, my belief is that when we are truly curious and we step into curiosity and then we set ourselves this challenge that is the growth process, at some point out of that, there has to be a commitment to then revisiting the curiosity. So that habit becomes a commitment to whatever the next chapter may be. To bring this to myself now, like being creative is actually one of these areas of my world that when I first started my business, I was so adamant about creating the habit of creativity.
Mm.
And you will know this when you start a business, you have a ton of free time
Right.
because you've just started a business.
Right.
You don't
Exactly.
have a long list of clients.
Yeah.
So when I want to have an hour of creativity in the morning, I got my whiteboard, I got this. No one's waiting for my call. No clients are on my calendar,
Your
you know.
manager's not standing over you going, Steve, the KPRs are due. Yeah.
Like my executive assistant is not waiting to hear her orders because I don't need her at this
Yeah.
point.
Right.
Right. So being a creative guy when I first started my business, it was like this isn't really much of a commitment that I'm making. The question's going to be, can you remain creative as the business grows? And the interesting part of this growth work that I've done, Mitch, is as I've built the business, I've looked for excuses to say, okay, this is why I can't be creative now because I got too much going on. Like
Yep.
I believe creativity is at its best the moment your eyes open and you
Yep.
sit down, and there's so much science behind that, which we could easily go into. But for
Right.
me, creativity at its truest is right there first thing in the morning. However,
Yeah.
I got busy days now. And sometimes I want to just come up to my computer and say, okay, I got some emails to check on.
Yep. Yep.
And suddenly now I notice, oh, you've created a behavior for the last 2 weeks where you've closed off your ability to be creative. So,
Yeah.
and where I'm going here, Mitch, is what are we doing through this growth process to ensure we're protecting what it is that's working for us? You know,
Yeah.
it's one thing to identify the habit. It's another thing to create some momentum around the habit. But then 6 months from now, hey, have we started taking that thing for granted, or are we
Yeah.
still continuing to protect it? And this is one of the key lessons that I took from my world in sport, is that with athletes, there are things that they must do to an excellent level day in, day out when they are gunning for, say, Olympic glory.
Right.
They don't get the privilege to take a day off when it comes to the details. If they do that, every one of their competitors gets a win on that day and they go
Yep.
in the lose column. And
Yep.
for me, when it came to creativity, I'm like, Steve, your creativity is what has built this business. And now you're going to assume that is the business built? Is that it? Is this the house? Is this the
Right.
house? Has
Yeah.
it
Is
got the
this what
seat?
we're living in for the rest of
Is
the
this
time?
it?
Yeah.
Or is
Yep.
it going to keep growing? Well, last time I checked, everything that I'm trying to build, it has still plenty of growth to come. It's like, well,
Yeah.
then what's going on with this creativity, brother? Like, we're not implementing it. We're not protecting it. And so I
Yeah.
have to revisit that growth acronym at any point because that habit can sometimes just go adrift. And I
Yep.
just have to say, hey, what was serving me previously could still serve me now. Let's
Yeah.
remind ourselves why. And then let's simply give ourselves that grace of like, hey, it's gone away. It's gone astray for a little moment. Now let's use the very process that put it on the rails in the first place and get it reestablished so we can rebuild that momentum and use it consistently.
So true. I love that. Let's go one step deeper into that, because I think that is so wildly important. And what I love when I talk with somebody like you is, I enjoy talking theory, but I always love to talk with a practitioner. So I know
Mm,
you're not only are you teaching this, but you are using it. So one of my questions is to go one step further. What are some specific, because I know you're a habits and behaviors guy. So what are some specific habits that you use, whether it's daily or weekly, to
mhm.
check in on the growth, to check your habits? Are you plugging in a time on Fridays, or are you plugging in a 15 minutes at the end of the day? What are some of the habits that you use to kind
Mhm.
of work this loop, and keep you
Yeah.
moving forward and growing?
Yeah, it makes me want to share this story, which I wrote a book a few years ago, Shock the World. It tells the story of this Olympic athlete, of this LSU swimmer that I coached to becoming an Olympic champion. And one of the stories I tell in there that people gravitated towards in a way that I just wasn't expecting them to
I
was
love those.
was was yeah, it's just like I just kind of put it there as like a little, like,
Yeah,
oh, this is a
that's a
this is a
fun
nice little
story.
connection
Yeah,
story. Like, it's not really that big of a deal. But I made this joke. I was like, I'm at this point in my life where a lot of gentlemen, I turned 40 this year, so for the
yeah,
last 5 or 6 years now, guys between the ages sort of mid 30s to mid 50s will always ask me, like, Steve, how do you stay in such great shape? Like, how do you stay in such great shape? And I've been what I've been as an athlete. So in my
yeah.
mind, like, great shape is a very different definition to most people. But
Right.
I sort of take the compliment and I go, well,
Yeah.
you know what? There's actually something I do every single day that allows me to be consistent when it comes to just staying in shape. And they're waiting for me to give them like this workout that I do or
Yeah.
this nutritional
Yeah.
regime that I have.
Kettlebells. Yeah.
Right. It's like, what is it? Are you a hit guy? Are you a this guy? And I'm like, I'm not in any of those guys. I
Yeah.
do all sorts of exercise, but here's my secret. I have what's called my first and final 30. That's it. First and final 30. Because Mitch, last time I checked, if there is 1 hour in our entire day that we have more control over than any other hour in our day,
Yeah.
it's the addition of the first 30 minutes and the final 30 minutes of our day.
Yep. Yep.
And we tell ourselves, because of alarm clocks, because of the time we have to be at the office, because the time the kids need to be at school, the time that certain things happen after school, and certain things that we have in the evening. Someone wants to grab a drink. We tell ourselves, oh, now I'm on their schedule, whatever it may be. No, 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 no. You want to really start owning your behaviors and creating the kind of habits. Get honest with yourself and just say, I get to decide when I wake up.
Yeah.
I get to decide when I go to bed. And I know with anything like this, Mitch, there's always going to be exceptions to the rule.
Yeah. Right.
The fact is, for the
But
majority of
most
us,
days. Yep. Most
most
days.
days,
Most of us.
we
Yep.
decide when we wake up and we decide when we go to bed. My first 30 minutes is the most important 30 minutes in my day every single day, because I make a decision to wake up at 5 a.m., not so I can tell people that I wake up at 5 a.m., not so that I can,
You're
not
not
so that
that
I
guy.
can, right, I'm not that guy, not so that I can go to the gym before the gym opens. I
Yep.
don't even work out. I don't even work out first thing. No, no, no. That first 30 minutes allows me to operate in a space of complete solidarity,
Yeah.
complete silence before the rest of the world wakes up. And because I do that, it allows me to work into my day on my terms.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, if I just take 30 minutes, it doesn't have to be journaling. It doesn't have to be anything too specific. It just has to be a key decision that I am choosing to make this the final 30 minutes of my day. Bedtime is coming, and over the next 30 minutes, I've got a couple of decisions to make.
Yeah.
What I got to do tomorrow? What do I want to do tomorrow? What do I want to make sure gets done tomorrow? And sometimes I make a decision in that final 30 minutes that tomorrow, for whatever reason, I actually do need to wake up at 5 a.m. and go straight to the gym, because if I don't, I won't
Yep.
get to work out tomorrow. And it's that simple. It's that simple. And so, and again, I try not to be naive to the simplicity of that, because I know for some people that isn't simple, but at the same time, simply owning, as you go through a growth acronym like that, owning the habit that, yes, we do get to decide when we wake up and we do get to decide when we go to bed most days. And if we can just own those first and final 30 minutes in our day, you'll be amazed how much simpler all the hours in between become when it comes to a sense of controlling what you do with that time.
Oh, that's so good. And what I love about that is it is so simple and powerful, right? But it's illustrative of what can happen when you're intentional with the first 30 and last 30 versus accidental, right?
Hmm.
When I think about myself on my best days, yes, but on my less than best days, right? where am I tempted to scroll? First 30,
Right.
last 30, right? And if I'm tempted to scroll in those first 30 and last 30, I think about, okay, what's my day look like? Or what's tomorrow look like if that's my activity in those first 30, last 30 versus going, wait, if I'm just more intentional with that first 30, last 30, you're right. It sets up your day, it sets up your week, it's all of that. So I think I love it. I'm with you. Sometimes it's so easy to dismiss simple, but so often the most powerful is in the simple. So I love it. Steve, what's the best way for people to find out more about you, connect with you, continuing in this conversation on growth?
Absolutely. So everything in my world now is growth ready. So when it comes to learning more about me, you can go to growthready.com. You can find the podcast Growth Ready. You can even find us on Instagram at Growth Ready. All of these different ways that you can find what we're doing, who we are, and what we're about, how we serve you. From a speaking side of things too, you'll find all the information you need to know about me again on growthready.com. But from a coaching standpoint, the one thing that I love to tell everybody that cares enough to listen to me for 42 minutes is that the way that we separate what we do with Growth Ready is that we call ourselves performance partners. We're not necessarily, yes, we lead with executive coach, high performance coach, all this kind of thing. But the moment we start working with people, we say, hey, we're your performance partner. Because at the end of the day, if we're ever going to optimize performance, we have to do it on your terms. Have to. So the work starts with just simply identifying how can we do it on your terms? How can we use things like the growth acronym to actually help you identify who it is you're becoming, what it is you want to achieve, and how it is we can then just simply partner with you on this more than likely lifelong journey towards whatever growth may look like for you down the road. So that's a little bit about me. That's where you can find everything you need to know.
That's great. I love it. So as we're wrapping up, as we're talking to that dream think doer who's like, all right, I'm on fire, right? I'm thinking through my growth. I'm thinking through the gaps. I'm getting through it, but to be able to say, all right, what are the resistance? What do I want to own, right? How do I want to work this thing? Where do I want to find that truth? And obviously move into some habits for that person that's maybe on the fence going, yeah, maybe I'll start tomorrow. What's that last thing that you would say to them to get started on this process now?
You've decided that what you need to do comes with some form of risk. If you're feeling hesitation, you've said in your mind, well, it would be a risk. Even if you're saying it consciously or on more of a subconscious level, you're saying it on some form. You've decided that there is a risk. Do me a favor in this moment. Just try to articulate what the risk is. Try to articulate what the stakes are. And that is actually your first gap. It's just to simply say, hey, listen, if I have a sense of, listen, if I have to do this, I have to commit a certain amount of money, I have to commit a certain amount of time, whatever it is, go ahead, create that gap. Go ahead, identify that resistance, and then start to ask yourself questions around what does that therefore mean I need to own and what kind of work that I need to do. But all that is your body's way of saying there is a risk, there are some stakes. And you know what I believe, Mitch, is when we identify risk and when we identify stakes, it just means that we care. It just means we care about the outcome. So for me, I hope that even just simply owning the risk, owning the stakes will help you see that you actually care about making this happen. So quit waiting. Go ahead and start doing.
That's so good. I love that. And what I love about kind of actually doing the simple act of writing it down also helps to draw it into our brain where it's not just kind of lurking in the shadows, because that's often the things that are at a subconscious level and just kind of lurking in our brain in the shadows, that tends to shut us down. But when we bring those things more into the light, it's like, oh yeah, that might be hard. That might represent challenge, but actually, as I write it down, it's like maybe it's not as big as I thought, or maybe it's kind of exciting, right? So I love that simple line of questioning, which is so powerful, but also the act of writing it down is such a great place as that next step. Steve, thanks for the brilliance that you brought today, but also the brilliance you're bringing the world, brother. I appreciate you so much.
I appreciate you, Mitch. Keep the mission going, brother. What you're doing, this is the kind of work the world needs. So keep it going.